And we are live.
All right. Welcome to the Rabbit Hole podcast, where we do mediocre research and give our unwanted opinion on a topic that you probably don't care about. Today is kind of a part two over what we went through last week. Last week was UFOs specifically. Today we're going to move actually into the inhabitants of those said UFOs. So we're going to cover some ancient alien type things.
Awesome.
All right.
Awesome. Some ancient aliens.
Mm-hmm.
And we're minus Tyler again this week. He's going to come back. We promise. He's just he's dealing with some sickness right now. So just bear with us on that.
Yeah, he has a
CJ, do
weak
you have
body.
anything? You have anything you want to add?
No, I don't. Not just right this second. I don't say I do.
All right. Well, I guess we can just kind of jump right into it here. Last week's episode, we hinted at some ancient UFO encounters that we'll definitely be elaborating on a lot this week. Tristan, do you want to? I know this is going to be kind of your baby. This is your bread and butter. You want to kind of take us off?
Yeah, I'll start off with kind of where a lot of the question stems from is about the ancient aliens thing is the pyramids and the Sphinx in Egypt. Um, so a lot of people ask questions on how the Egyptians built the pyramids. If you don't know, the Great Pyramids of Giza, there's three of them. Well, the Giza is just the one specific one, I guess. But there's three pyramids there in a row, kind of, and they're made of giant limestone bricks, which weigh, I don't even know how much they weigh. 2.3 million blocks of limestone and granite weighing as much as 80 tons apiece. So it's estimated that the whole pyramid itself weighs approximately 6 million tons, which is a lot for an ancient civilization to move. It's a lot for people nowadays to move, let alone people who didn't even really have a wheel, I don't think, back then. The pyramids were approximately supposedly built over a 10 to 20 year period around 2560 BC. And there's just a lot of speculation that not only because of the size of the pyramids, but where they're at specifically and how they line up as to what the inspiration was for building them. One of the, let's see if I can find the right thing here.
Now the Khufu was the pharaoh that commissioned the Great Pyramids, right? Wasn't it? It was Khufu.
Yeah.
Okay, so that would have been
In
like
the 4th dynasty.
26th century BC, so like 2600 BC.
Yeah, 2560.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Um, but one thing that's really curious about not just the pyramids in Egypt and the Egyptians, but ancient civilizations altogether, is their interest in astronomy.
Mm-hmm.
So the pyramids actually, I have to look this up. The Orion effect, I think is what it's called,
Okay.
or
Yeah.
the Orion alignment. But anyways, the three pyramids in Giza, they line up perfectly with Orion's belt, which is just an insane anomaly,
Right.
honestly. I mean, just the fact that not only did these ancient civilization build and move these 80-ton bricks of limestone, which limestone isn't found right there at Giza. Limestone, it was, I don't know where exactly it's found, but it's not there. Supposedly they drug these blocks or bricks, whatever you want to call them, miles and miles and miles to where to where the pyramid was actually built. Uh, but not only did they move those things, but they lined it up somehow perfectly with the three stars of Orion's belt.
It has and that gives it a perfect east to west alignment, correct? Isn't that what I think that's what it does? Is it gives it a perfect east to west alignment.
It's the Orion correlation theory, is what it's called. That the largest pyramid lines up with the largest star in Orion's belt.
Okay.
But the thing that they're saying is that ancient aliens, whoever they might have been, came down and were the ones that gave the Egyptians the inspiration or the guidance on building these pyramids. Or you can go with another theory that the Egyptians didn't build these pyramids at all.
Right.
And that they just took credit for it. Which is something that I kind of like to believe, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where you get into civilizations that existed before. Which, I mean, not many people think that there were many civilizations before. The Egyptians are kind of one of the first. You go back a little further than that, and you had the Sumerians. And they were kind of the first known civilization that did any sort of writing or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But there's speculation that there was not just a civilization, but an advanced civilization. So the Sumerians and the Egyptians, they had hieroglyphics and stone carvings and stuff like that. But they didn't really have a civilized written language, I guess, or anything of that
Right. It was a very
sort.
primitive language.
Yeah, they were an ancient civilization.
Right.
What you would think
Definitely.
of when you think ancient civilization. The speculation is that the Anunnaki were not one of these types of civilizations. That they were advanced, just as advanced as we are, and that they were wiped out by some sort of great calamity, such as a flood, which, if you know religion at all, you know that a flood happens. So I mean, that's just
in every single
that
religion.
kinda
There's
gets away
not
from
a single religion where there's not
some sort of
great
calamity,
flood.
yeah, some sort of great problem.
Yeah, and it's 99% of the times a flood.
Yeah. But there was also that the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs, I guess. There's just a bunch of different that kind of gets away from the ancient aliens thing, but they tied together. So the Anunnaki, which is what this civilization was, is that's the term that they've been used, that has been put on them. But maybe they weren't of this world is another. It goes really deep, and it kind of branches off into a bunch of random different places and ideas and speculations. But the idea is that they were not of this planet. They were not normal humans. They weren't people.
Right.
But they were humanoid, and that their DNA. I'll rewind a little bit and talk about evolution. So supposedly evolution states that we evolved from fish or whatever microbial bacterial things.
Right. Some
in
kind of
water.
mycelium.
Yeah, that crawled up on land and blah blah blah. Anyways, turned into monkeys that turned into us. One of the ideas is that we are a mixture of that ape and monkey DNA and some of this Anunnaki as well. And that's why we have evolved in such the way that we have and have discovered technology and tools and fire and all that stuff, whereas there's still like, because there's people always, that's one of the main arguments for evolution in the first place, is that there's still chimps here.
Right.
So how did we all come from chimps whenever there's still chimps? And it's just saying that, like, what is that? Oh, sorry, I got sidetracked. Um, but that's one of the things, is that the Anunnaki mixed their DNA and kind of performed experiments, I guess,
Hmm.
on us to evolve us into this kind of thing. Which abduction stories and stuff like that, they usually also involve different kinds of experiments and stuff like that.
Yeah, and also as far as us being the correct term there, I think is uplifted. That's like the term whenever you bring something up to your level or genetically mutate something to an upper level. I think that a lot of the uplifting. I mean, you can see it today around us. I mean, my dog's uplifted because he wouldn't know how to sit unless I taught him how to sit, right? And it's just us teaching another species or modifying another species, whether it be through selective breeding or through genetic mutation or whatever the case might be. I mean, uplifting is definitely a real thing that happens all around us. And it's really not far-fetched to believe that we could have been uplifted or that in the future we'll uplift some alien civilization that we find on another planet.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, like you said, for example, a dog.
Mhm.
There's definitely certain dog breeds that have been breeded and evolved to be taught how to work cattle better,
Right.
or have a coat that doesn't shed, or not smell, or whatever. There's just different kinds of dog breeds to fill different roles, which is something that definitely could have happened to us. Is we could have been genetically modified by an advanced civilization to carry on their kind of genes, I guess.
Right.
And that's where it kind of gets a little tin hat ish,
Yeah.
is that they left some of their DNA behind, modified into us.
Hmm.
So okay, so the Anunnaki are an advanced civilization. I'm just gonna play devil's advocate here and just believe everything that comes out of my mouth.
Okay.
So the Anunnaki are an advanced civilization living in um, the Middle Eastern part of the world. So
Hmm.
what would now be modern day Egypt, Turkey, places like that.
Iraq. Yeah.
Iraq, yeah, Iran, Pakistan.
Because I
So,
believe Sumeria, that would be like your Euphrates River Valley. So like Baghdad area.
yeah, I don't really know where Sumeria would have. I don't know, like, the um
I think it's like Baghdad.
s- s- I don't know where their civilization would have stretched to. I don't really
Yeah,
know
so
how
modern
far,
day Iraq and
how
Kuwait.
big they got.
Iraq
Yeah.
and Kuwait. Yep.
Okay. So yeah. Middle Eastern Mediterranean area.
Hmm.
How big did their civilization get before I start rambling on
Um,
again?
so they went all the way
I don't know
over
much about Sumeria.
to the Mediterranean and then down into parts of Iran and oh gosh, now I'm blanking. Iran and Afghanistan.
Okay. Yeah, so they pretty much, I mean, they were in that whole. Anyways,
Yep.
back to the Anunnaki. So think of the Anunnaki as this large, advanced civilization that they know there's something happening. So to put that into perspective, we thought the world was ending in 2000 with Y2K,
Hmm.
uh, again in 2012 with the Mayan calendar stuff. And just throughout our lifetimes, there's been a couple different times where people thought the world was ending.
Definitely, yeah.
So, what if they were like that too? They thought the world's going to end at this time on this day, so we need to figure out a way to preserve ourselves past that point. Because that's what, that's what any slightly intelligent species is going to try to do is
Yeah.
self-preserve. Like even the dumbest animal that you can find tries to self-preserve. You know, they get food, they get water, stuff like that. They try to avoid predators. So anyways, they start grabbing up these different animals and performing experiments and see what they can genetically link their DNA with to pass their DNA on. And that's when they come across chimps, monkeys, stuff like that. And one day they're finally right. Their world ends. There's a flood, a fire, a meteor, an ice age. I don't really know. I'm not going to go into that. But their world comes to an end. Since they are so advanced, they have means of escaping the planet, which is another thing that we can see in ourselves a lot.
Hmm.
Uh, there's all sorts of people trying to go to Mars and stuff like that and thinking that we're going to start a colony on Mars. And they're always trying to figure out what planet can sustain life next. And how are we going to escape Earth whenever it all goes to hell and all that stuff. That's what I think the Anunnaki did is they left a piece of themselves here to see if it would survive, packed up most of their other people and left and traveled elsewhere. Now, that comes to the question was is were they advanced enough to do this? I mean, it just you don't know because no one even knows if these people actually existed.
Right.
But who knows? They may have traveled to a different dimension. They may have traveled to a different planet, a different. They may have just shot themselves up into space and died. Like, who knows?
What was their name for humans? They like supposedly the supposed name. They have a supposed name for humans. What was that? Do you know?
I have no idea.
I'll look that up.
But anyways, so yeah, they leave behind a piece of themselves that endures this calamity, whatever it was, whatever it happened to be, and through thousands and thousands of years, tens of thousands of years, um, this wasn't just overnight, but through tens of thousands of years of evolution and that DNA that they put in there, because recessive genes, dominant genes, all that stuff. We know how genetics work. Through the different types of genetics and stuff, their DNA rose back to the surface and killed off that other DNA, and that's what they, that's what we have become today. That's what we turned into. Is just a very genetically modified ape.
I mean,
That's what
very plausible.
I've heard, like theories that are the just to kind of go opposite of like the genetically modified is that we are actually descendants of it, right? So they found Earth. They took a subset of their population and they threw us on Earth, right, along
Hmm.
with all these other animals, and we developed. And eventually, I mean, after enough time, you forget your past
Hmm.
and you'll start over, you learn everything. I mean, if something happens, say the flood or
Hmm.
the ice age or something like that, so you lose all your technology, you can't, you didn't weren't prepared for it or whatever, so then you're starting all over. And that's kind of where we started and diverged as a species or whatever.
Right, and I think a lot of
Maybe
religion really points to that happening almost. I mean, like when you look at every single religion, from all these different areas around the globe, I mean, you have a very similar foundation that it's all built on, and I think that really points a lot to saying that this is a possible thing that could be the truth.
yeah. That I mean, that's just mean, there's so many different ideas of this. Maybe the Anunnaki weren't aliens at all. I mean, that's probably the most logical thing, but I think we've learned through our or through our couple episodes here that I don't really like to think logically. But one of the things I keep going back to like the different like statues and buildings and stuff like that that are just feats of something that I just don't think is possible by Egyptians. I mean, not to try to diminish the Egyptians or anything, but the Sphinx, for example, it's one piece. That's not, I mean, it's not like the pyramids were millions of limestone bricks that were
Yeah.
placed there. The Sphinx is one giant limestone block, and it was carved in its place where it is. And there's actually some recently they've found erosion on the Sphinx that dates it much older than what they originally thought. Like they originally thought that the Sphinx was built. Let me look here. I want to get my dates right.
I think it's like 2,800, maybe even a
Yeah,
little.
they originally thought the Sphinx was built between 25 and 2600 BC. So that puts it about the same time as the pyramids.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the new evidence and the new erosion that they found is hinting towards the Sphinx being closer to 12,000 years old or 10,000 years old, which is much, much, much older than not just the pyramids or whatever, but much older than the Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
The Egyptians weren't even around in 12,000 BC.
No.
So, and the erosion patterns, they don't just show the age, but they show the type of erosion
Mm-hmm.
is from rain.
Yeah.
Specifically, flooding heavy rain over a period of many, 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 many years, like 5, 6, 7, 1,000 years. Uh, yeah, so that goes back to that kind of correlates with the flood idea,
Mm-hmm.
is that there was some sort of type of flood um, during the Sphinx's time. But
No, yeah, I think that's almost something that's hard to refute, though. You can obviously tell what's not wind erosion, because wind erosion would be a solid cut through it, right? It wouldn't create grooving like you see on the Sphinx. I think that's hard to
yeah,
refute that.
that's the thing too, is that's what's astonishing a lot of people is that I'll bring up the main dude where I get these ideas from, but Graham Hancock is kind of the guy behind a lot of these. I don't think he specifically found the erosion on the Sphinx, but he's behind a lot of these ideas and a lot of this talk about the Anunnaki and civilizations that predate the Sumerians and the Egyptians. But him and he's been like refuted a lot and debated a lot. But that is proof of maybe not exactly what he's saying, but that's proof of something. The fact
Right.
that there's different kinds of erosion on the Sphinx that dates back that far it gives a little bit of credit to his claims,
Right.
I guess.
I think you're right there. And I mean, even on a grander scale, whenever you look at ancient Egypt and the surrounding areas, at one point Egypt was a very fertile land. I mean, everything that we know about it tells us that at one point it was, a lush land, and that's 6,000 plus years ago. So that's more the time that I think that a superior kingdom in Egypt or even the Middle East as a whole would be more, what's what I'm looking for, fruitful maybe, would have more productivity, I guess, really, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah. Well, the Nile River Valley floods, kind of on a schedule,
Mhm.
anyways. But yeah, so the before the Egyptians got there, definitely would have been the best time to have kind of a civilization and kind of a people there.
Right. And there's a lot of evidence for a pre-Sumerian great civilization in the Middle East. I mean, from Göbekli Tepe, and that's another huge one that's definitely dated at 10,000 years ago, but it's a large-scale temple complex. So we haven't even unearthed the whole thing. We're still trying to figure out how big Göbekli Tepe actually is. And I think there's a lot of evidence for that. And I know we're kind of straying from the alien part of this, I guess, and getting more into the ancient civilizations part of this. But I don't know. Do you want to drag us back to aliens kicking and screaming?
Well, I mean, I just that's the thing is, from where I stand and from what I believe, I think they kind of coincide together.
Yeah.
I think that these ancient civilizations that we're talking about are a form of alien, even
Right.
if they were from this planet originally, that they were somehow so advanced that they became alien, if that makes sense. Like, to us now, like, if I think that if an Anunnaki was to like show up on the doorstep, that they would be kind of alien-like. I think that they would be much stronger than us, much faster than us. Uh, they would
What if
obviously be
that's
much smarter than us.
what if that could be like a link too, right? So say they farmed us essentially. They were introducing their DNA to this ape or whatever, right? And then they took off. They
So
found a way to get out, and
that's
then every
really
so
one of the
often
thoughts.
they come back to check, right? I mean, to see how far along we've got, if we've made
Yeah, and that's
specific
what the aliens are.
advancements.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's one of the big Anunnaki theories is that now I'm going to get really deep in the whole Anunnaki thought process for a minute, but a lot of the thought process goes into that, or not really a thought process, but the theory. It has to do with the ninth planet as well. I'm opening a whole nother door by even saying the ninth planet, but Nabril, right? Isn't that the name for the Anunnaki planet, Tristan?
I don't know.
So this comes off some tablets, some Sumerian tablets, and it is thought that the Anunnaki come from a planet called Nabril. Okay, and Nabril is the ninth planet in our whatever planet, an unfound planet in our solar system that like rotates on this huge axis. Okay, and the one you hear all the time when people talk about this is that the Anunnaki needed gold to layer, because they were losing their ozone layer of their planet, and they needed gold to create like reflective mirrors, kind of like on how we do on satellites, to kind of create an artificial ozone layer around their planet. I think that's the correct terminology. So they came to Earth and they uplifted humans, or back then, whether it was the Denisovans or the Florentians or the Cro-Magnonites or whatever, uplifted whatever it was to create actual humans that we are today as a slave labor force to mine all of this gold for them, so they could bring it back to their home planet. And that's really one of the big theories that you'll hear a lot with the Anunnaki.
Yeah, I mean, there's just so much that could have happened that, I mean, it's just wild. Like, were they here to begin with, and they left and came back? Or did they show up to the Sumerians and the Egyptians and give them, like, inspiration for this kind of stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Did they show up and treat us as slaves, like you're saying?
Right.
Or use us and use our resources in some sort of way? Because that's what, I mean, if an alien civilization was to come invade the planet or whatever,
mm-hmm.
and use us for anything, it would be for some sort of resource.
Yeah.
Like they would be, they would use us to gather a resource for them, or they would use us as the resource.
Yeah.
Or food or something like that. Like it wouldn't be just out of curiosity. I don't think they would
Right.
They would be looking for something.
Like what's that John Travolta movie, Battlefield Earth, where they're mining gold.
Is John Travolta in that?
Yeah, John Travolta plays one of the aliens. Yeah. Yeah, but and that's essentially, I think they actually based that movie on that same Anunnaki theory about them coming to mine gold.
So I see that as being like, I think like the biggest one I could believe myself
mm-hmm.
would be the offset. They took off, they come back, and that's why when abducted, or if they claim to be abducted, they're never hurt, right? They've done some tests on them, they've looked at some stuff, and they just put them right back.
Mm-hmm.
It could be to see just how far individually, like, they've developed. Like, it's a case study. Like you bring a few in, and let's see how as a whole we are developing, or
mm-hmm.
what our technology is, or just what milestones we've made, or like how deviated we are from them.
Definitely. I mean, that's really all of these theories that we're going to talk about. They sound extremely far-fetched whenever you are just tossing them out there. But really, the more you think about it, I mean, no more so far-fetched than what a lot of people believe.
Yeah, like it. I mean, they're far-fetched, and they are kind of tinfoil hat-ish. But it makes sense. Like it's what if that thing was to happen, that's why it would happen, kind of thing.
Right.
Like,
definitely.
It's just, yeah. But I don't know if that's one of the reasons. Like, as CJ, you've played a ton of Assassin's Creed. I'm pretty sure you have too, Christian. But
yeah, more than I like to admit.
I think that's honestly one of the coolest parts about that game, is that it kind of, honestly, it's one of the things that sparked my interest in this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of the things that I kind of like. I started to deep dive into this subject because of Assassin's Creed, and like when you meet the first or whatever. I haven't
first
played
people.
one of the old ones in a long time. But
PlayStation.
Yeah.
But
honestly, that's what sparked my entire adult education, really, in history. is I want to know, Like, I want to know about things that we don't know about. I want to know about the Scythians. I want to know about those bad A's. I want to know about the Amazon warriors. I want to know about, where did all these people go? What happened to them? All these events that we don't have written down because it's too far ago that anything we had written down is eroded away and no longer exists. Or it's buried under, 15 feet of sand and we can't find it. Just like any evidence we really have to tell us what happened in that time period isn't really here anymore. I mean, it's more, we're working off of structures and a couple surviving stone tablets. There's no actual documentation from that time period that's really survived.
Yeah, it's just another one that kind of pops into my head that a lot of people forget about is Atlantis.
Yes.
Atlantis, everybody thinks of the underwater civilization
Yeah.
kind of thing. And maybe Atlantis was on land, and during that flood, that's when it went underwater. Or maybe it was underwater, and I don't. It's just a weird thing. Like, I don't know. I think Atlantis was real at some point in time. All of these legends have to come from somewhere.
Yeah,
they aren't
there's
just out of thin air.
there's some sort of fact or something that's happened to make them come. I mean, especially back then, for all I guess in the old times, everyone was looking for an answer, right? They're trying to create something, they're trying to make something, but then at the same time, I guess if there could have been say the aliens visited, right? And they were doing these weird things. Maybe they had control of, like, if you want to go back to like a Greek or Roman mythology, maybe they had control of how the sun moved through the sky or something like that. And he was able to, the guy come down and he was able to say, "Hey, I did that." They were like, "Oh, well, he's a god then." Or there's someone that could have controlled the weather. These powerful beings, and in order for them to explain it, was like, "Oh, they're high and mighty. They're all powerful gods."
Mhm.
And
I think when you look at a lot of your mythological pantheons or stories, or even just the entirety of it, it really plays to that. Like whenever you think about Mount Olympus, being this place that's kind of out of reach and you can't obtain to in the sky. You think about the Norse, you start talking about Midgard versus Valhalla and, Highgarden and all of the different realms of almost like planes of existence, right? When you start talking about realities.
But with like the Norse, right? They're all together. Like with the elves, they can they can move from one reality to another just freely. Like they could,
Yes.
I mean, they could be in Midgard, but and I'm not expert enough to go ahead and try to guess anywhere else.
Right.
It could be, but they could physically be somewhere else.
Yeah, on another realm of existence.
There was the different universes or whatever, right? So there was of course Midgard, which is us, right?
Yes.
Or the Earth or whatever, and then there was Valhalla.
Yep.
Or wherever but there was also like Jotunheim.
That's where the
giants.
giants.
Came from. There was different places that these things were.
Yeah. So I can run through them real quick. There's Asgard. So Asgard is where the gods live. Asgard is where like all the gods live for them, kind of like their Mount Olympus. There's Asgard's, there's Vanaheim, Alfheim, Midgard, and then the Bifrost Bridge is what connects all of that. and then you get into Svartenhelm, uh, Nidavellir, Nilfhelm, Helhelm, and Muspelhelm. Now, these are all different realms of existence, essentially.
Helheim, how you pronounce
Mhm.
it?
Helheim.
It's just another representation of hell or
Yes,
the
correct.
underworld or something similar, which goes to that. They've all got something that
Yeah,
when you're dead, you go
there's a bad place to
somewhere
go.
else.
Yeah,
Yes, there's a place where you go for doing the crappy stuff, or you're rewarded for going. For say with the Norse, you're rewarded for dying with a weapon in your hand
yeah.
or
You go to
during battle.
Valhalla,
Valhalla. So it's
and really, you're going to Asgard.
mhm.
Valhalla is just you're in Valhalla at the halls um, of the Aesir, I think is what it's called. So you're technically going to Asgard.
Mhm.
Kind of like it's kind of like their heaven, right? Or when you think about like another weird occurrence here, you talked about relations of like kind of the trinity of triage of like, hey, there's your home world, there's your Midgard, your Earth, whatever you want to call it. There's Valhalla, there's heaven, there's Mount Olympia, whatever you want to call that, and then Helheim. So in the Greco-Roman existence, that would be you're crossing the river Styx, and then you belong to Hades, right?
Well, but with the Greco-Roman though, it is the underworld is just you're there, right? I mean, it's not you don't have to do anything special to go anywhere. Just when you
You're
die, you
just
go to the
you're
underworld.
just kind of it's kind of almost like a purgatory thought.
And then there's a specific, I don't know if it was like if you're descended from a specific god or whatever, you
Mhm.
get to go to a field, which is a
I
little.
think it's you're judged on based on what you did,
Mhm.
whether or
Yeah.
not you
Mhm.
get to go to like certain different places within the underworld. But like you guys are saying though, it all kind of correlates
Mhm.
together and they all kind of have these same ideas. If you
Yes.
lay these religions and these mythologies over one another, Christianity, uh, Islam, Greek mythology, Norse mythology, all of them,
Even the Mayans and the
Buddhism,
Aztecs
yeah, Mayans, Aztecs,
and
everyone has this kind of
Buddhism,
like
Hinduism.
yeah, everyone has this like you're here. If you do good, you'll go here, and if you do bad, you'll go here,
Yep.
kind of thing. Which kind of relates to like us all stemming from one place,
Yeah.
or us all having this inspiration from one set of people. And we all have came from one set of people, obviously. Uh, we're kind of all Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, whatever, or we're all from the Caucasus Mountains, basically,
Right.
and just migrated into different parts of the world. I think we kind of went over that with our Bigfoot thing, but this kind of like goes deeper than that in the fact that like these oral representations of something going up, like
Right.
looking to the stars and looking up has always been like our thing.
Mhm.
Ancient civilizations built stuff that looked to the stars and that aligned with the stars.
Which
And it's
actually
just
with
like,
that, with just going back to, I'll just interrupt you for 5 seconds.
oh, you're good.
To go back to the pyramids of Giza, they said that it was actually it aligned with is it nautical north or true north or
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
Orion's belt. Yeah.
Well, it was the exact. I mean, polar north, polar
Mhm.
north. It aligned perfectly with polar north, and they said that was kind of weird because back then they didn't have compasses. So how would they know what polar?
Exactly.
It was either a freak occurrence or they knew something.
When you think about a lot piggyback on when you think about a lot of these things like the pyramids, the Nazca lines, a lot of your South American big temples like Castile or the Mayan temples, or even Angkor Wat. When you start thinking about these are things that you can see from space. Okay, I mean when they go over across them with the ISS, they can take pictures of them. So I almost wonder if this wasn't some kind of landmark, right? Hey, this is where we're at when you're looking from space.
That's actually, I like that theory, and I
Mhm.
haven't really ever heard of that before.
Yeah.
Like kind of because think of where these things were built.
Mhm.
Like you said, Angkor Wat in Cambodia.
Cambodia. Yep.
Um, the
Castile in
pyramids,
Mexico.
the
Mexico City.
pyramids
Mhm.
in
Giza.
Egypt. That's
Stonehenge.
3 different continents so far, on different sides of the planet,
Mhm.
but they're all in a line,
Yep.
kind of along the equator. They're all in that kind of zone. So if you're a civilization flying by, or alien, whatever, flying by, you can look down and say the Earth, this spot on the Earth is pointing at the sun, and this spot on the Earth is pointing at us. So we're here and at this time.
Mm-hmm.
You can use those geographical locations to determine not only your location in space, but your time in space,
Yeah.
or how long it took you to travel to that point in space. Man, this has got a lot deeper than what
Yeah.
I originally thought.
Blew
I'm going 100 miles an hour right now.
that mind. I can see it on your face, man.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah. No, yeah, that's
But that's
in
what you
really.
would do.
Oh,
I
yeah,
mean,
that's what you would do.
that's
Yeah.
what you do in um it's like land navigation.
Mm-hmm.
You find a spot on the map and you measure it. You get like a distance and you use kind of like a pace count to determine, how far it is or how close it is or when you get there. So they would be at their home planet, their home dimension, home civilization. I
Mm-hmm.
don't know. They would look through their little fancy telescope. They would see Angkor Wat in
Mm-hmm.
Cambodia, and they would start traveling towards it.
Yep.
And every time they saw Angkor Wat again, they would say, okay, it's been this much time. It takes us this much time to travel this far. And then once they reach us and they see the pyramids, they're like, oh man,
Mm-hmm.
this just got way deeper than I thought I was going to get on this.
Yeah. And then, like, if you want to dive even more on it, look at North America and look at the Great Mounds.
I
So
forgot all about those stupid mounds.
when
Good Lord.
when Hernando de Soto touched down in Florida, he made a beeline straight for Arkansas. Okay, this is what 1580s, 1590s when Hernando de Soto lands, his Spanish explorer lands in Florida. Makes a beeline straight from Florida to Arkansas. And he gets around the modern day Memphis. And he says in the 1580s, 1590s, when he hits Memphis, there is a walled, fortified city at Memphis with, I can't remember his exact calculations to how many people there was, but like 100,000 people. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that's what he said. Like 100,000 people that he said was in this facility. And what he noted was these massive mounds that they had built. And to this day, I mean, they're not maintained anymore. They don't, we don't keep the grass off of them. We don't keep the patterns in them. But there's still snake mounds. There's still the Cahokia mounds. All of these massive things that you could see from space that are geographical markers.
Yeah, so for example, if someone listening to this wanted to Google what he's talking about, just look up the Great Serpent Mound in Ohio.
Mm-hmm. Yep,
and that's one of them. It's mind blowing. The not just the fact that there's a giant mound in the shape of a snake, but it's a giant mound in the shape of a snake that is eating something.
mm-hmm. It is,
and it looks like, if you compare the way that hieroglyphics looked, like the curves and
yes,
the shapes and stuff
yes,
like that they used, it's very similar to what this snake mound looks like. Like if you were to take this picture of this snake mound and slap it on an Egyptian wall, you would think, oh, that's the Egyptian word for snake.
Yeah, you would think so.
Or that's the Egyptian pictograph for snake.
So
So it's just weird how, like, civilizations that are on complete different sides of the planet, across a giant ocean, or not, Pangea, we'll get into
yeah,
that too, have the same type of, like,
artwork,
yeah, I guess,
calligraphy.
yeah, that's what I'll say, artwork, calligraphy, yeah.
Yeah.
The same type of, like, writing style.
So are you familiar with Mormons? So
Golden Tablet and Utah is about all I know about Mormons.
so
Potatoes. I know about Utah. Utah potatoes.
Idaho's potatoes.
No, that's
Idaho.
Ah.
Damn. I thought I was
So
clever. I thought I was
the
clever.
Mormons. Let me just toss these puzzle pieces together for you real quick. Okay. Now, just a disclaimer: I do not prescribe to the Church of Latter-day Saints. I am not a Mormon, and if I offend your faith or get something wrong, I am sorry. It's been a long time since I read the Book of Mormon. Okay, it's been at least 4 or 5 years.
Remember the intro. We do mediocre research.
Mediocre research. I'm pulling on memory that the military made me do like 5 years ago. So, the Mormons, when you open up the Book of Mormon, one of the first things, the Book of Mormon starts in Jerusalem. Okay, and I'm going to get the names wrong, so I'm not going to go into names or anything. But the whole basis of the Book of Mormon is that these tablets, they steal these golden tablets in Israel, and then they travel to America. Okay? Now, if you're familiar with the Phoenicians and Oak Island and all that stuff, you've probably heard these theories before, but you didn't know that they were part of the Book of Mormon. It's thought that the Phoenicians traveled to the New England region at one point in time, around the biblical times. And that's a big theory that goes into the whole Oak Island, if you guys are familiar with that.
Yeah, the Oak Island thing, the curse of Oak Island.
Yeah, goes into that. But the Mormons believe that these people that were now our modern-day Indians are descendants of Middle Eastern folks that traveled roughly, I want to say like 1500, 2000 BC, traveled to North America and settled North America. And
Native American, Indian.
yes, exactly. So, yeah, Native American Indian, sorry. Yeah, that can get kind of confusing.
I was picturing India, so I was like, something's going on.
Yeah. No. Native American, I'm sorry. And that they, with some people who were already here, populated all of North America, and that became your descendants. But that story, which was wrote and told long before this theory was even thought of that we're talking about today. Joseph Smith and the whole Book of Mormon came about in 1820s, I think, 1825, I want to say. So that's long before we could have even thought of this theory as a possibility. And you're talking about Serpent Mound, which looks a lot like ancient Egyptian script. And the Book of Mormon is saying that ancient Egyptians traveled from Israel, Judea, and traveled to North America and populated North America. Now, I'm not saying it's true. I'm not even saying it's probable.
So it's basically, is it like throwing out the idea that they crossed the land bridge, or is it like in correlation with that they did both?
No, they traveled by sea. Is the
Okay. So it's basically throwing out the theory that they crossed the land bridge at wherever that's called,
so
the Bering Strait.
well, so in the Book of Mormon, the family that steals these tablets and runs from the Middle East, when they get here, there are already people here.
So
They're
kind
just
of mixed
not
together.
as prevalent. So then you get these two big warring tribes that go against each other. And then it splinters off into a bunch of different faction groups. But going back to my Hernando de Soto, whenever de Soto came to the U.S., or what's now the U.S., and landed in Florida and traveled through, um, he's talking about large scale fortifications and cities that he's encountering along the way. And what we don't think about is that before like Plymouth Rock and before we really start settling North America, 90% of the Native American population died off from disease that De Soto and the early Spanish explorers brought to the Americas. So there could be a whole history there, like a whole civilization that we're not even, we don't even, couldn't possibly begin to fathom that they're there,
Absolutely. Yeah. I've kind of always thought that too. Honestly, it was that the Native Americans that you hear about today, um, that you can read about or whatever, that actually ties to something. I've been listening to the book Empire of the Summer Moon. If you haven't listened to that, it's a really good one about the Comanches in the 1800s. But it kind of goes into where they came from, how they came from the Nimino tribe
Mm-hmm.
back in the 16 and 1500s, and how they were basically just primitive cave people. Um, that kind of goes away from the like advanced civilization
Right.
type stuff. But like just how far back does it go is the
Mm-hmm.
question.
Yeah.
Like I mean, how far back were those people here? There's the theory that they came over across the land bridge, the Bering Strait, following herds of animals. What if there was people here before that?
Right.
Like Europeans and Spanish settlers brought diseases that killed off most of the Native American population.
Mm-hmm.
What if the people that came across the land bridge brought a disease that killed off the real Native Americans?
Yep.
Um, what if the genetically modified monkeys created a disease that killed the original native Earthians?
Yeah. You never know. I mean, it's such a vast open. Oh man, it just blows my
It,
mind
it
thinking
never
about
ends.
it.
It goes back like it goes back endlessly, honestly.
I just want to know who
Like
built Göbekli Tepe 10,000 years ago.
that's a question. That's a question. Who built like I'm just
Who built the Sphinx?
the amount of science that goes behind lining up millions of blocks of limestone that weigh 80 tons each to match stars that aren't always visible.
Right.
It's a feat of it's modern engineering would like go into doing that. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, it's just and there's other evidence of it too. Like I really harp on the pyramids because that's where I got my start in this kind of research.
Mm-hmm.
But Stonehenge as well.
Yes.
Stonehenge, doesn't it line up with the equinoxes or something
Yes.
like that?
So as it brings out the fall harvest and the fall equinox, and it brings in the new equinox, the spring equinox, as well as multiple other. Stonehenge isn't actually the only one in the Britannic Isles that does that. There's a few other um, built things built around the same time that do that. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's like
Go ahead.
with just going back to like the hieroglyphs, and how they done it and all that stuff. Like they found hieroglyphs that are of like the ancient astronaut,
Yes.
where he's wearing an astronaut
Yeah.
suit, or I mean, which it could just be something had nothing to do with space travel, and we just somehow coincidentally molded our spacesuits around to look similar to this spacesuit from thousands of years ago,
Right.
or this figurine from thousands of years ago, or like the hieroglyphs that have what seem to be phones or
Yeah.
technological devices, laptops, stuff
There's a
like
lot of
that.
hieroglyphs that have um, tools
Mhm.
and stuff like that that would not be present in your stereotypical Egyptian life.
Oh no, and you're talking
And
about the
it's just,
precise
yeah,
limestone cuts of the pyramids. Uh, are you familiar with Puma Punka?
nope.
So Puma Punka is a temple complex in Bolivia. It's built by the Tiwanaku Empire. I believe they're like a predecessor to the Incans, and it's built somewhere around like 300 AD. The stonework at Puma Punka is, I mean, the precise cuts and the precise alignments and the precise work of it really rivals the Egyptians. And when you look at a lot of that, the Incan and South American stonework, Mayan, so on and so forth, I really like especially like the Incan because they're a very very early South American civilization, and there's another early South American civilization that you're probably going to talk about at some point in time, um, maybe some Olmec in there, but
Forgot about them too.
yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. There's some Easter Island heads. I don't know, just
I was
something like
about to
that.
cover the Easter Island thing.
Yeah, because I
Um,
think I think that the Easter Island heads are actually Olmecs. That's my
yeah, because
personal
the
theory.
Olmecs built like a head type thing, didn't they?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So
My personal theory.
I'm gonna brush over the Easter Island things real quick. Well, first off, before I'm looking at pictures now of
Mm.
your Pumapunku or whatever it's
Yeah.
called. Yeah, those laser cut
Yeah.
straight lines
Hmm.
and those high precision holes.
Yes.
That's not something that's done with a chisel and a hammer.
No. 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 No.
So, just saying. But anyways, yeah. So Easter Island, a small island off the coast of Chile
Yes.
in the Pacific,
Correct.
is known for its heads, the Easter Island heads. They're giant heads that don't really look like people heads. They're kind of elongated and narrow, um, kind of like how I don't know if I described what an Anunnaki would look like, but that's kind of what an Anunnaki or advanced civilization would look like. Uh, and I keep saying advanced, and when I say advanced, I mean so far advanced that they have physically become altered,
Hmm.
if that makes sense. Like they are like think of like a they're so smart that their skin glows kind of thing. Anyways, uh I keep getting weird. But anyways, the Easter Island heads they're elongated and they were always thought to be just heads buried into the dirt and they're all facing outwards towards the ocean. And the weird part about it, again, it kind of goes back to the same thing as the pyramids. These heads are made of one solid piece of stone carved out, and they're so large that it would have been astronomically difficult. I say astronomically for a reason, a key word. Difficult for an ancient civilization to move these heads and position them in the way that they are. Like
Yeah.
they're
I mean,
set
if they would have
out
fell
like you're
over
supposed to see.
while they were trying to move them, it would have killed the people.
Yeah, exactly. And like I think there is some that have fallen over time
Hmm.
due to like just degradation.
Yeah.
But uh, I want to say I remember seeing something about how one was uncovered to have like a body.
Yes. I believe you are correct. I've read about that before too.
I can't find it anywhere Um, but yeah, I'm just gonna say that I mean it's true because that's how I roll. But that oh here
I'm sending. I found it. I'm sending it to the chat.
yeah I'm looking at one right now. It's the only moai facing the ocean.
Now, the carvings on the back are extremely interesting because those carvings on the back are very intricate. On the back of the Easter Island, the body.
It's on the back of the body.
Yeah, I'm sending it as well. Some very intricate carvings on there.
But yeah, so well there you go. So that just goes to show that the fact that these things have a body shows that they weren't carved in a spot, picked up and moved. At least not by the Rapa Nui, which are the people of the island. Um,
I've heard theory before that like the way they would have moved them would have been almost to rock back and forth. Right? Like, have you ever been like, were you ever a kid and you hopped in like theoretically, not saying I did it, but like a clothes hamper, and you'd rock it back and forth, and you'd walk forward, right?
Okay.
That's essentially how I've seen theorized before that they were moved. They'd have ropes tied to it or whatever, and a group of people on this side and a group of people on this side, and they'd pull, and before it got to a certain point, they'd pull back on it, and it just rock it back and forth to get it moved.
okay, a head that I could maybe believe that with like just a head,
But the body?
but a whole body.
Well, I mean, they're only what, 6 times the size of a normal human being?
Yeah, I mean, did you see that picture that I sent? These guys have got it dug down 20 foot and they haven't hit the bottom of it.
Yeah, I mean, I could see. I mean, if you had enough people with enough rope.
But why? For what purpose? I mean, you're talking about an early civilization that, honestly, in my opinion, what that early civilization is going to be focused on is defense, fortifications, and food. I'm sorry, but if I'm worried about the next warring island coming to get me and having enough food to feed my children, I'm not going to spend a lifetime carving an Easter or a head or a whole body. Actually,
I think they would be more like scarecrows. I think would be. So when I see these, like if I put myself in the shoes and I'm coming up to this island, and I see these
giants.
You might not realize that they're stone. Those are just some huge people just stood there, right? You might be a little more inclined to be like, "Ooh, maybe I should back up."
Okay, I mean, I can kind of see that.
That's
theory.
how I would see that as being just from everything I know from my years of mediocre research on anything. Is me saying that like that's what I imagine they probably did then it's a scarecrow.
Like a head is one thing, and you can make all these explanations and stuff for a head, and I would probably believe it. Like I would be like, oh yeah, okay, they built the head then, and they moved the head, and they did the head for a purpose. But the fact that there is an entire body that's buried, you know, 10, 15 foot below the surface, um,
and it's buried.
That's just like that it's buried. Like
that's not just
ways for people to dig to just stick it in the ground.
Yeah.
Also, why would they take the time to carve out this features of a body just to stick it in the ground?
Mm-hmm.
It just makes me think that they weren't the ones that built it. That's what I'm getting at here.
That could be like, what if what if they were like a guardian thing for them, and they, who the residents of the island decided that they reject whoever's in control of it, and maybe that was them burying them, was them saying, "Hey, we're sticking it to the man," type of thing.
I don't know. I
I don't
feel
know,
like you would need
Silver
like
slush.
200 people to move that thing.
but it would be. I think it would be. It's honestly easier to move a tall head with a body than it would be to move just the head, because the body is going to have more weight up top to
Yes.
be able to rock it versus the head being right here, and you've just got this much room.
I just don't think that they built them. And if they did build them, I don't think that they were the I don't think that the reason they built them is just to for decoration or for anything of that sort. I think that they were if the Rapa Nui or whoever is on that island did build them, that there was outside influence, um, or that they didn't build them at all because they just don't. One, they don't look like people. They have that elongated face, uh, and they're buried up to the shoulder in dirt. Uh, they're all they're outlining the outside of the island. They're almost like you said there as like a scarecrow, like a protector kind of thing. Like I don't know, maybe this island had some sort of significance to a outside population. Um,
Or maybe
because
the
that's what
the
was there.
residents of the island were able to have some sort of like contract or something like that, to where the people that were aliens, or who, whatever they were, they how they come to a deal where they're like, "We're here, we'll help you create something to protect yourself or to scare other people off, and trade for something else." Maybe the same way
Adrenochrome.
as like, yeah. Well, we're getting taken off. We're getting taken off the Play Store now. Uh, if like, or maybe, because the same thing is like with the pyramids or something. Like they wanted to build huge monuments, or like the Sphinx and stuff like that. So if maybe these greater beings were just going all over the world, offering assistance or whatever for them to help them with something.
They were.
I mean, that's
They definitely were. I'm sorry. They were. Okay,
Let's
we've
not.
got to the
No more
point.
speculation.
We've
I'm
got
gonna
to the
say
point in this podcast where I'm gonna say it. Aliens built all this crap. They did it all.
yeah, absolutely. I think so. I mean,
I mean,
I
it either
just the
has to.
Easter Island heads kind of confuse me because, like you said earlier, with all these big, large temples and stuff like that,
Mhm.
that are all astronomically aligned in a certain way, and all that stuff. Uh, I see a reason behind those. I
Yes.
see a reason behind um, making them so large you can see them from space because then they're a landmark. Or I see a reason for aligning them with certain stars and stuff like that because then they can provide you with some sort of like, um, again with a landmark, like if you line it up with this certain star, blah blah blah,
Right.
then you know when that star is above there, it's this time, or it's that is that star because it's above this temple at this time, kind of thing. I just the Easter Island heads kind of weird me out because I don't see a point in them besides something that is actually like uh supernatural.
Right. Almost seems more decorative
Yeah,
than a
or
purpose is served.
like something like they're I don't know. It's weird. It's like they're guarding something or that they're I don't know.
Maybe they are.
I just don't think I see this Anunnaki or I see this ancient alien, ancient civilization, advanced civilization, whatever you
Mhm.
want to call it, whatever this freaking podcast has been about. I think that they were they weren't the decoration type of people. I just
Right.
don't see that at all through
Mhm.
any of the correlations that have been. Everything has a purpose. I think that they were too advanced and too intelligent to do shit for decoration. I
Right.
think that's something that we do because we're stupid. Um, sorry, I said a bad word. I ruined the whole episode.
You're fine.
But I just don't see it. I think that we're like that they weren't that low, I guess. Uh,
Right.
I don't know.
They were more.
The
They
the
weren't self-serving.
Kardashians
It
the
was more
Kardashians
purposeful.
make decorations, you know?
Right.
The
Yeah.
Anunnakis don't.
So we briefly, I know we're getting really close to the end here, but we briefly touched on something that I would like to bring in as a huge correlator. Um, we talked previously about the correlations of religions and mythologies throughout all of these different civilizations that were supposed to have not had any contact with one another, right? Um, what about elongated heads? Okay. I know that sounds a very weird statement to make, but the significance with elongated skulls, whether it's the crystal skulls, whether it's the ancient Egyptian depictions, or even the pharaohs would use their headdresses to create an elongated skull, Sumerian depictions, ancient sub-Saharan African tribes depicting of elongated skulls, even as far back as looking at ancient Celtic and Brittonic elongated skull references. I really think that there's some kind of significance there with the fact that all of these different quote unquote civilizations that didn't have contact with one another were all depicting this kind of deity of an elongated skull. Any opinions there?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you completely. That's what I said earlier. Like, whenever I picture an Anunnaki, I think of them tall,
Yeah.
taller than us. I think of them, well, basically, I think of Bigfoot, just without any hair. Um,
Like a giant. I mean,
little do you know, all of these episodes tie together. Uh, um, I just, yeah, giant, like you said, a giant, yeah. There's actually a lot of evidence of
Yes, there is.
giants. Uh, a lot of mythological stories and stuff like that of giants. I'm sure we'll cover it eventually.
well, they're I mean
But
they're referenced a lot in like in all cultures, and I mean it's not just one culture or whatever saying, "Hey, giants, big people." Like,
Mhm.
yeah,
No, every
exactly.
culture has some
And
kind of.
that's just what when I think of. I keep saying Anunnaki because that's just the term that I have in my head for it.
Right.
But when I think of something that's hyper intelligent, that's
Mhm.
the word that I've been looking for this whole time. They're not just smart; they're hyper intelligent.
Right.
Beings. They are almost like they're tall. Uh, their heads are elongated. Their
Mhm.
skulls are elongated to create room for a larger brain. Uh, they
but
just
that's if. So what if they were all visited by somebody who had something long, right? Like all these civilizations, their heads. They had someone intervene with a elongated skull, and so they thought in order to replicate their genius or whatever, like we need to, or to show like we're on their level, right? With like the pharaohs basically being gods, quote
Right.
unquote. They're like they try their best to get their skulls to elongate or have the appearance of being elongated
Right.
in order to appear more godly or more
Mhm.
like the individuals who have come to help them and give them all this stuff. Maybe to help them have more power.
Yeah.
yeah,
I.
it's like
Yeah.
what's that? Imitation is the most sincere form of
Hmm.
flattery.
Yep.
Is that the? That's I mean that it goes to that. these beings came down, met with these people, um, put their influence on them, that kind of thing. And these people were like, I want to be like you. Um, I'm going to make myself like you, kind of thing. Maybe it was like a, I don't know the word I'm looking for. I'll get back to you on that. Sacrifice to them or something. I don't know.
Right.
A gift to them is to I'll do this to myself to make to be more like you, kind of thing.
Mhm.
One of the big things is that comes across in a lot of religions too is to live like, for example, Christianity, live like Jesus.
Mhm.
Islam, live like Muhammad.
Mhm.
Norse mythology, to live like the gods.
Mhm.
It all ties together. Like you want to reach that level of transcendence. Um, Buddhism is a big uh, Buddhism thinks like that a lot. Um,
Yes.
they meditate to reach enlightenment is kind of what
Mhm.
it's called, and that kind of all ties back into that. What if these people were trying to transform themselves in a certain way to be more like their god, and their god was just these interdimensional aliens?
Uh, yes, I don't think I could have worded that any better. I mean, I don't.
But
Yes.
we didn't even get into the interdimensional part of this.
No.
Yeah. I mean, we come in this thinking like, oh, we're gonna talk about aliens, and then
Oh, we're gonna cover it all. Blah blah blah,
Well,
and we
we're
just
on
babbled for an hour and a
ancient
half.
aliens right now. You guys know what Anunnaki means in Sumerian?
No,
It means those of royal blood.
there you go. It all ties together.
That sums it all up right there. Those of royal blood.
Yeah. That's just yeah. If I keep talking anymore, it's probably gonna get into some other kind of subjects that we could probably save for a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
yes, I mean, we kind of glossed on a lot on this one. I feel like,
Mhm.
and I feel if we go back and pick and choose from this stuff, we could fall into even more rabbit holes.
And I really think
Just
that's what a lot of this is going to be. Our first couple, maybe our first season is going to be a lot of just broad topics. And then we're going to start dissecting this stuff a lot more as we get into further seasons.
Learn more as we go, kind of thing.
Yes. And I think we'll really dive
But
deeper
yeah,
into it.
that kind of I mean covers everything I got for the night. I just yeah. What do y'all think? Anybody want to give kind of a brief summary of their feelings about all this?
CJ, you want to go first?
well, I mean, so I guess my feeling. My thoughts would be on this. It's either something has intervened, some civilization, something has intervened, or this is some serious big coincidences. And I'm talking, I mean, it's not just like, there's not just small coincidences like you run into your buddy at the store, like, oh, what a coincidence. This is massive coincidences that
Literal
don't just,
astrophysics.
I mean, they are astronomical coincidences. I mean, for certain things to line up very specifically with certain things on the other side of the world, or to have done things the same way, or like there's the pyramid. Like I don't know if we ever talked about it, but like the pyramids in like South America and stuff like that. Right? That's not just a. I mean, there are pyramids in South America. I'm
Yeah,
pretty
yeah,
sure.
like
Okay.
the
Yeah,
Mayan.
yeah, and they all, a lot of them line up astronomically with some sort of star
Yes.
Mhm.
or something like that as well, or the sun or something like that.
Yeah.
I just
And
don't
when
really know specific names of those,
Yeah.
so that's why I didn't
well,
really go into
And they,
Castile is the really big one that's in Mexico City, and that's the one that the Mayans would commit all of their sacrifices on.
that's not even a common shape to have a building. I mean, that's actually uncommon
Are you talking about Castile?
to have, like pyramids,
Oh,
right?
okay, yeah, because pyramids and all, yeah.
Yeah, the shape of a pyramid. I mean, go anywhere in the world and tell me where you find a pyramid. Memphis, Tennessee, I guess. But I mean, for these places that have no contact with each other to design the exact same shapes, buildings, everything
Yep.
they use. I mean, it's
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 too
a
much.
big
Yeah.
it's a big coincidence if it isn't if
Yeah.
something.
There's too much correlation between all this stuff for it
Yes.
to just be blown off as, well, they were just, you know, like, well,
Yeah.
that's just what people do. It's not what people do.
Oh,
I don't go outside and build temples in my front yard,
like,
especially
oh,
not
you
ones shaped
guys
like pyramids.
you
So,
guys built a pyramid? Well, that's crazy because
if
we
I
did
build
too.
anything, it's usually square.
Yeah,
So, uh,
mine's usually flat. It falls down.
but yeah, there's just too much correlation between all this, and I kind of mentioned Pangea earlier. Maybe that's all it is. You know, maybe at one point in time everything was touching, and everybody kind of got to talk with one another and carried influences to different corners of the world. Maybe it's that simple. I have a hard time believing that, um, which is weird because I believe in interdimensional aliens. But I just kind of pick and choose and do what I want, so leave me
Yeah.
alone.
You do what you want to do.
But yeah, I really think that there was some sort of that's my main thing, is even if all the other stuff that I kind of spout about sounds like gibberish, the temples in South America, the pyramids in Egypt,
Mhm.
the Sphinx especially, it all just really reeks of an outside influence to me.
Yeah.
So end that's where I'll end my spill. Thanks again, everybody, for joining us this week. Uh, thanks to you guys for getting with me and talking.
Yeah, I mean, and we've really made it. If you've made it this far with us, congratulations. Send me a message and tell me you made it this far, and I'll give you some kind of prize. There is, we're going to build on these exponentially as we go. And I'm really excited for where this is going to go, and all the things that we're going to get to talk about. And it just blows my mind that, I mean, I honestly, with how many people have liked the Facebook page, how many people have listened to our podcast, like every time I check Buzzsprout or Apple or anything like that, I'm just blown away that many people actually want to sit down and listen to us talk. And I mean, I just extremely grateful that everybody's showing support like they are, and just stick with us. It's only going to get better from here.
We should make a podcast bingo. Anytime we reference certain things, you get like a bingo.
You get a bingo.
Stuck
Get
around this long, you
get cards. Yeah.
A 52.
Yeah. Every time Christian says DMT, you get a
7 episodes in, and we've mentioned Bigfoot every one.
yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's all I have. That's all you guys have.
Yep.
Guys, great episode. Thanks for listening, everybody, and have a great day.
Bye, everybody.